So Schaefer, as we kind of look forward to Saturday and the full open practice that people can attend, where are you going to be like dialed into? Like what's the first thing you're going to be looking at?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this last year. I think one of the things that I thought Nebraska was going to have a 9-win season last year. I still think they should have had a 9-win season last year. But when I've done the sort of, introspective, what was I wrong about, which, some people would tell you a lot. I would tell you it wasn't as much. But a lot of it came down to I really believed in last year's wide receivers core at face value going into the season. And it's not like I knew in the spring that Malachi Coleman was not going to follow up his freshman year, or that Jalen Lloyd would be, I'm going to say underutilized, because I feel like he was underutilized. I don't know. I don't know all the specifics to that, but he's a far better receiver and athlete than what they were able to get out of him last year. And I think I expected more out of Isaiah Neyor and Jamal Banks than was fair, based entirely on a really hot spring, where they had a great spring game against their own defense, and Dylan Raiola carved them up. And then the way the year started, all the way through the Illinois game, I still felt good about where things were at with the passing game and the receivers and all of that. And so I think I want to spend some time Saturday just getting eyes on this receiving core, because the people that I've talked to that were there the year before and like them think that this group is better. So, I want to see, because I'm very much in a, I'm going to sit at the 7-5 spot in a prediction until I have a reason to think otherwise, because I kind of need to see this team progress before I can really say, okay, yeah, they can win 8 or 9 games. I just feel snake bit from last year. And so I want to see what happens in the wide receiver portion of the practice, or what I can watch there. I want to put eyes on, an Nzyiah Hunter. Like, is that a guy that could go from a great freshman year at Cal to then Nebraska's able to get him, even if it's incrementally better? You had 2 freshmen in Jalen Lloyd and Malachi Coleman who didn't do anything for you last year. So is Jacory Barney, like, what is his actual role going to be in 2025? What does it look like with Dana Holgorsen? Because you look at those last 4 games, he really only had 1 game where there was an impact. But then if you think about it, it was their best game offensively under Dana Holgorsen. The 9 catches, the 85 yards or whatever it was against Wisconsin. And then on top of that, I think Dane Key, I feel good about. I think Dane Key, relative to Jamal Banks or Isaiah Neyor, has a far more productive history, came against the SEC. I think he'll be able to step in Big Ten play and help Nebraska there. So I'm less, thought process oriented there. And then I want to see what a Demetrius Bell can do, and what Quinn Clark and Keelan Smith and all the depth, and then the freshmen in Cortez Mills and Jeremiah Jones. So that wide receiver room with a whole new coach, I think it sort of flew under the radar for most of the spring, in the sense that, we talk about the names of Key and Hunter, but they're going to play a pivotal role in all of this. When we're like, oh, what does Dylan Raiola look like in year 2? Some of it is, does he have wide receivers that can win against man coverage? Does he have wide receivers that can go and get the ball? Does he have wide receivers that aren't going to have it taken away on a 50-50 against an FCS team in Northern Iowa? Like, those are big things that happened last year. And some of his progress and some of the team's success is just if the wide receivers are just straight up better than last year, more wins could come just because of that. So I think that group has been under discussed relative to the running backs, relative to the offensive line, relative to Dylan Raiola himself, relative to special teams, certainly compared to the defense. It's weird, but I think the wide receivers are a big key to this whole thing working how we want. And there's either the assumption that it's going to be great, which I did last year, or there's a we don't know. And I'm in the we don't know category, and I want to see it on Saturday.
Schaefer, you answered like 15 of my questions.
I know I talked way too long.
No,
it's phenomenal.
But I want to know your philosophy on this, because I mean, you've covered the Huskers, you've seen different iterations of different offenses and teams, and just watching football in general. When it comes to this year's team, would you rather see one one player be Dylan Raiola's go-to receiver. So it's Dane Key, it's Jacory Barney, it's Nzyiah Hunter, it's one of those guys, or a tight end, whoever it is, just a number one reliable target that he feels the most comfortable with? Or would you rather see it be a more balanced attack where, you know, all the receivers end up with 500, 600 receiving yards in some capacity, or it has that more balanced, layered look where it's not every game you're relying on one guy to get that? Which do you think is more realistic for this year's offense and what you see, and which one do you prefer just from what you've seen and what you hope to see from Dylan Raiola?
Yeah, I think in the perfect world, you have a hybrid of those. And what I mean by that is what I prefer is the balance, because I want to see Jacory Barney and Emmett Johnson and Nzyiah Hunter and Dane Key all have their moments. Luke Lindenmeyer, Heinrich Harbert. I mean, they have offensive players coming out of the ears. It's how do you utilize those guys? And can Dylan Raiola just distribute the ball? You know, that's really what it comes down to. But the hybrid aspect of it is in critical moments when you need a guy to make a play. Can Dane Key go be that guy? It's 3rd and 8. Can you force feed the ball to Dane Key to get the first down, because he's going to win unless they completely take him away? And if they completely take him away, then is Dylan Raiola the guy who's like, all right, nope, that's double coverage. I'm not going to force that ball in there. I'm going here. Because if they have that, like it's a fence-sitting answer, which I am very good at giving, but it's also the idea that one of the things they didn't have in the red zone last year was the guy to just go make the play. Like how many times, and some of it was Jamal Banks might have been the most interfered with wide receiver in the country in the red zone, but that's a different conversation. But, you know, can Dane Key in the red zone, or, you know, whoever it is, I think it's going to be Dane Key because he's bigger and he's got the experience, but can he go make plays in that situation? So, like, do you have this hybrid version of you have the guy that when either the game is on the line or it's a critical play, you can get him the ball and you are going to have success, but can you also distribute, you know, throughout the rest of the game? So I think it's certainly a combination of that, but on balance, they have so many weapons. I think it would be a disservice to have more of a Trey Palmer-esque type thing where it's like, we're going to try to get this guy 14 targets because he's clearly the best player. I don't know that they have that. And I don't know that anyone's skill set is so unique that you have to do anything like that. Like, you might have games where Jacory Barney only touches the ball 5 times, and you might have games where Jacory Barney touches the ball 12 times, and you could still have success either way, because it's going to be about, do you maximize when Jacory Barney touches the ball? When he takes it on a sweep, was it set up and is it blocked well? And does he maximize that? I mean, those are really what we're talking about, because if I just can't envision a scenario where they're going to have anyone that walks away this season with 1,200 yards receiving because he's just getting fed every game. I think it's more likely you're going to have a guy at like 850, a few guys, you know, over 600, a running back and Emmett Johnson that I fully expect to be involved in the passing game, a couple tight ends that combined might have 600. Like, there's a lot of, and I nobody do the math on that. That's way too many passes. But the point being, I think they have enough people to spread it out to be successful with. Please do not hold me to that number. Did the quick math in my head. That's a very nice passing year for Dylan Raiola.
What number did you get to there, Schaefer?
So basically, if you were going off of what I said there, he's like at 3,700 yards.
So that's like a good number, but that's not unattainable.
Well, yeah, but if we're talking like 14 games, but if you're saying 3,700 yards in a regular season, that's pretty high.
That's the Dana Holgorsen progression, however. Did the math.
Hey, I think I'll sign up for 3,700 yards today.
If you find the people who aren't signing up for 3,700 yards, they're run the damn ball guy, and they got left at the train station.
If he throws for more than 1,500 yards, something went wrong.
That's the Millard.
They don't have enough leads if they're throwing that much.
Hudson, that's the Millard North offense, just so you know.
It's the old Millard North offense.
Anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah. Alan Burrell's opening that thing up, baby.
All right, whoa.
Come on.
Calm down.
Modernized.
Calm down.
Anyway, did you see the new unis?
Baseball, yeah.
And the foot ones are nice.
Listen,
too.
Hudson wants to play baseball.
The
elite uniform.
The all black football or baseball unis are nice at Millard North. Right. You know, I'm just saying. I know the principal there. If you need in.
It's a public school.
Great. I'm excited for years of this.
He can get in.
I can help. Schaefer, have you talking about wide receivers? Have you allowed yourself at all to think about, because I feel like both the elephant in the room and a thing that we also sort of forget about is Nebraska did have a giant upgrade at wide receiver coach this year as well, from McGuire to Shorts. And that's not saying anything bad about McGuire. I'm sure he's going to be a fine coach throughout his career here. But Shorts, I believe, is a genuinely very good wide receivers coach today. Have you allowed yourself to think at all how much different or how much closer to being right you could have been if they had a wide receivers coach like Shorts last year with Nair and Banks and Lloyd and Coleman versus what actually played out? Because it seemed like that development step was the thing that really missed there.
I haven't, because some of what just wasn't happening last year, and this is sort of the crux of what I thought the opening statement of Matt Rule in Las Vegas was, or at least the biggest takeaway that I had, is he had the phrase that when he went and looked back at the games that they lost last year, the common factor was they just weren't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Daikiel Shorts can't make Isaiah Nair catch a ball that's right in his hands to beat Iowa. Like, he can't do that. Daikiel Shorts can't make a guy wrestle the ball away when it's a 50-50 in the end zone and you get the touchdown against Illinois to go up 3 scores at halftime or whatever it's going to be. So it's a situation where the position coach has a lot of value, and I think there's certain things in certain areas where he's going to be able to do that Garrett McGuire couldn't. But at the same time, he's also getting to operate with some of the guys that they wouldn't have if it wasn't for Garrett McGuire. So it kind of works in both fashions.
Fair.
And if he is as good of an in-game coach as it seems like he would, not in-game, but just a development coach as it seems like he would be, based on the fact that this was the one guy that Dana Holgorsen, who was given the complete capacity to change his entire offensive staff. And the only thing that he wanted was Daikiel Shorts to be his wide receivers coach, I think speaks volumes about how he feels about Daikiel Shorts, not so much about how he felt about Garrett McGuire, because I think there was some attempts to keep him around in different roles, but more about what Shorts meant to him as a wide receivers coach. And so if there is an added jump that comes from that, if Jacory Barney, for instance, is a better, more dynamic wide receiver because he's now, and this is something no one talks about, he spent his entire high school career playing 47 positions. He got to spend an entire offseason focused on wide receiver 2 years in a row. Daikiel Shorts, a similar size wide receiver that was a dynamic player, is going to impart things to Jacory Barney that he just wasn't getting before and had never been in position to receive before, because he's not having to be a defensive back and a quarterback and a running back and all of these other things like he was in high school. So I think there's a lot of value that Shorts can add, that it's hard to know exactly how that'll manifest on the football field, but it does feel like it makes that room as a whole better, which again, I think they're almost the X factor in a lot of ways for if Nebraska is going to be exponentially better. I think it's because the wide receiver room takes a massive jump. I think they can still be good even if the wide receiver room is fine. But if we're talking about like 9-3 or knocking off Michigan in September, it's going to come because this wide receiver room is that much better. Not just because the offensive line is good, not just because Emmett Johnson settles in as a running back. It's because they have guys at wide receiver that can make plays and do things down the field that they just couldn't do last year.
All right, Schaefer. So I want to ask you about not the wide receivers as pass catchers, but you already mentioned where the running backs are, and you said that you think that they'll be a pretty big part of the Holgorsen offense, but the tight ends were the talk of yesterday, and felt like everyone had a different opinion about Mac Markway, about how Heinrich Harburg was looking, about how Lindenmeyer has looked and stuff, and even Ravi today brought up Ingerson. Like, there's many different layers to that tight end room, which is maybe more crucial for development of the Dana Holgorsen offense. Is it the pass-catching running backs, or is it the tight end room in this season?
It's 1,000% the pass-catching running backs, because Dana Holgorsen's offenses have never been that reliant on tight ends. I mean, talking with Chris Anderson, our West Virginia 24/7 guy, and he was talking about the experience of covering Dana Holgorsen. You go look at the numbers when he was at West Virginia, they didn't have tight ends that were doing a lot for them in the offense. Now, where a Luke Lindenmeyer is super valuable and why he became a clear Dana Holgorsen guy when he took over is because he believes what he can do in the edge of the offense of the line of scrimmage, what he can provide there. And then the fact that he can also help you out in the passing game. And that's not to say that Dana Holgorsen is going to be the same guy that he was at West Virginia or Houston or Oklahoma State or wherever, and he's going to utilize these different tight ends. But I don't think their impact is going to be bigger than all of the catches that we were seeing out of the backfield at the end of last season with the running back in the passing game. Like I truly believe that version of Emmett Johnson gives Nebraska the best opportunity to be a dynamic offense, because he is not just limited to having to be really good at inside zone or bouncing this run to the outside or whatever else. I mean, his touches per game went way up. He had more catches in multiple games at the end of last year than he had in all of the 2023 season. He averaged 20 and a half touches a game in the final 4 games. And a large part of that was he had an average, I think, of 6.5 receptions a game in those last 4 games. So the pass catching out of the backfield is huge. I think that's why they're excited about a Mekhi Nelson. I think that's where an Isaiah Mosey could be really interesting for Nebraska too. And that's not to diminish what they have at tight end, because I know they're equally excited about all the different things they can do with Heinrich Haarberg. I do think there's an idea of the best version of Heinrich Haarberg may not be at Nebraska. It might be at the next stop in the NFL where you can, sort of utilize him a little more. And they think he has that kind of ability. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they're going to try to get what they can out of Luke Lindenmeyer and Haarberg. I mean, Mac Markway is a blocking tight end. We'll see what he can do in his career as a pass catcher. He got passed over at LSU because I don't think they thought that he was dynamic enough in the passing game. And he's going to have the opportunity to prove people wrong on that. Eric Ingwerson, same thing. I think it's more of a kind of a block first, hold the line of scrimmage, but then can help you out a little bit in the passing game. So I don't look for the tight ends to be huge threats by any means. But I certainly think relative to making the offense go as a whole, catching the ball out of the backfield is a huge, huge factor for how Nebraska wants to utilize its running backs.
Jay, if I thought about this while you were talking about the improvement or opportunity for improvement in the wide receiver room, is there a position group you think is worse this year than last year?
So worse is tough, because I think the upside of the defensive line is immense. Mm-hmm. But do we know that they can get to that level? So and then at the other,
lower floor.
Yeah, I mean, I think Riley Van Poppel has the ability to be the best defensive lineman we've seen in Nebraska in a long time. Mm-hmm. I thought that when he was a recruit. I have no reason to not think that now. I think the way that they treated Keona Davis last year tells me that he's a guy that they believe in a really high level. Williams Nwaneri was obviously a 5-star recruit. Cam Lenhart played as a freshman. So the upside on that defensive line is really big. It's just how quickly can they get there? Mm-hmm. I had the same kind of thing at linebacker, where John Bullock was so good last year that I don't want to say that Marquise Watson Trent can't do it, because he was the Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year. And there's a world where he's Nebraska's best defender, and it wouldn't shock me, because all he is instincts and being in the right place at the right time. And even though he's a little bit undersized and he may not look like a traditional Big Ten linebacker, being in the right place at the right time supersedes immense athleticism if you're going in the wrong direction. Dasan McCullough is the immense athleticism. Let's see what he can do in this position as an edge rusher. Willis McGahee has the ability to really take a big jump, I think. Same with Vincent Shavers. So there's spots defensively where the baseline was pretty high for Nebraska. And so they might come in underneath of it, but I think they have potential to exceed it, if that makes sense. And I know this was one of the conversations you and I had at the end of last year, Ravi, where I was a little concerned about, hey, what's this defensive picture going to look like? And I know you felt pretty strongly about some of the potential of what they have there, because you sort of get caught in this cycle of, oh man, how are they going to replace Ty Robinson? Well, I mean, he wasn't big ass Ty Robinson until he became that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that Riley Van Poppel can't do it, or Cam Lenhart can't do it, or Keona Davis can't do it. So it's the same with Nash Hutmaker. Like we sometimes fall in the trap of, oh, how are you going to replace this guy? Well, they had to replace somebody too. And they had to eventually get to the point where they could play to that. And going into his 3rd year, I mean, I want as much stock of Riley Van Poppel as I can get, because Matt Rule just breeds great defensive linemen. Mm-hmm. And I really believe he's going to be the next one.
And honestly, I mean, especially with Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher, those are really good examples. Like, they weren't guys that that we thought terribly highly of 2 years ago.
Well, just go back to 2023. The whole offseason was, what are you going to do with that defensive line? Are you going to have enough up there? Is it going to go well? And then you get into the Minnesota game. It's like, oh, yeah, they're going to be okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
They just wrecked that offensive line that people said was one of the best in the Big Ten. Yeah, I think they're going to do fine.
100%. And I think so that's a big thing too. And I think the thing that I like about this defensive line is I think Riley Van Poppel's better than either Ty or Nash were at the same point in their careers. The second thing is you're not going to have to try and replace them one for one, right? I think they're going to play a different style defensively where, like, if they were trying to replace a one-for-one Ty Robinson, like, yeah, they might be in trouble. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to play different defensively that plays to the strengths of the guys they have, and I really like the guys they have.
There's a whole way that this year goes where Nebraska might statistically have a lot of variance defensively, but could produce a lot more takeaways and explosive plays and be a better defense, even if they're allowing more yards per game or a few more points per game than what they did under Tony White. Like there's what's the stupid saying? There's a lot of ways to skin the cat. Like, I don't know why that ever became a saying, but there's a lot of different ways to have an explosive defense or a good defense. And sometimes it's trading the safety of keeping everything in front of you for the defender who has just enough athleticism to get in front of the ball, pick it off, and take it your way. So, if they can create more havoc, create more, third and longs to mitigate how often they were giving up 3rd and 7 and allowing drives to sustain because they weren't generating the pressure on 1st and 2nd down because they didn't blitz. That's I think effectively what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's honestly what I'm betting on. I'm betting on way more splash, havoc, explosive, whatever term you want to use for impact defensive plays. I think they probably do give up a little more in certain areas, but I think you're going to see way more in terms of impact defensive plays, and it'll end up being a better defense because of that, even if there's certain areas where it's like, I think they're going to do a better job of getting off the field on 3rd down. Like, even if they give up more yards per average per play, I think when they get in 3rd down situations, because they've got better athleticism and better upside, they'll be able to make the play to get off the field on 3rd down. So, like, I do think you can look at it and say, okay, they maybe give up a couple more points per game here, or maybe they give a couple more yards per game here, but I think it's going to be a more useful defense in terms of winning games.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what they're betting on with John Butler and Phil Snow, and just it's going to be a shift, certainly, from what it looked like under Tony White.
Schaefer, can I ask you one quick one? We were talking about when we started the show, we were talking about buying into rules process and the fan base kind of, moving along with where the program is as well, too. Where are you on the single digits? Do you think that we're going to learn anything when those come out about who the team picks? Rule had a little bit of a comment that he's not a part of that selection process. He's never been. He doesn't want to influence it by any means. But is there something about what you've learned from the past 2 years of the single digit 10 players that have been represented that we can parlay into something we could learn about this year's team?
At the risk of coming off more like myself than what I want, I guess I don't care.
Fair.
It's one of these things where, like, some of the single digit guys last year were underwhelming in portions of the season. So just because you're a single digit guy, it doesn't mean that you're going to be one of the best 11 players on the football field all the time for Nebraska. I mean, that's just the reality of it. But some of them, and I'd say his name a lot this offseason because I am very curious about how he will be replaced, not just in terms of, leadership or anything like that. He just was a guy who made plays. Like, John Bullock was a tremendous player for Nebraska last year. And, if you could keep somebody over, I go back to that Colorado game. Like, if you go back and you rewatch that was a man who played that game on fire. And so, like, if someone like that emerges where he was a single digit guy last year, I don't know that he was in 2023, but, that was someone where it's like, okay, this is probably somebody the team's kind of rallying around because he's a good practice player. I don't know that I gave him his full due diligence, but that was someone by the end of the year that if you had asked me, I would have told you was easily one of the, 6 most important people on the team, 5. I mean, how low does that number get? So, there's going to be moments like that in there, but there were some single digit guys a year ago that just didn't make as big of an impact as you would have expected, perhaps. So I don't want to. I think that's more of a team rallying point than it is something that I think is any sort of value to me in my analysis, or it's just kind of a, I guess, curiosity, in the same way that I never was someone who worried about who was getting a black shirt and who wasn't. I don't worry about who's getting a single digit or who does. But again, like I said, I worried about giving that answer because it's uniquely sort of how I am. I don't really care about any of that stuff.
No, that's fair.
Wow, Schaefer says cancel the black shirts. Okay, interesting.
No more single digits.
I'm sure I wrote a column about that effect in 2009 when they hadn't given them out yet and gave up 31 points to Texas
Just get rid of
Tech.
them.
Yep.
The same weekend they did.
The only black shirt Schaefer wants is a Millard North baseball jersey.
That's right. Welcome to the Stangs, Hudson.
I will let his mom know that we're going to be a Millard North family, apparently. It's been decided on the radio today.
By then, there's going to be Millard Central and Millard, Northwest. It'll be, you'll have plenty of choices.
We're going to call it a solid verbal for now, okay?
All right.
Schaefer, appreciate the time as always. Enjoy the rest of the week. Hope you have a stress-free move, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, guys, take care.